and also in regard to our interaction with people who are incarcerated or their families, as well as people who are on parole and their families. We have quite a lot of contact and interaction with individuals who are incarcerated or on parole. And so we're very pleased to be able to be part of this commission, and I'm sorry that the senator can't be here today.
All right, well, welcome. Thank you. And John Watson's representing Elizabeth Cronin, Director of the Office of Victim Services, and we've worked with John many times over the years. John, want to introduce yourself?
You know, Elizabeth's in back-to-back meetings today, and as it always is coincidence, I'm pinch hitting for her today. I'm counsel for the Office of Victim Services. Oddly enough, these two folks here, I worked under Tina Stanford when she was with us. I worked in the Crime Victims Crime and Corrections Committee when I was with the Senate. Criminal justice found me. I didn't find it. I've been with the agency for 15 plus years now.
Great. Yes, and we've worked many times over the past, John, on multiple projects. And thank you for coming today.
Sure.
Kelly Palmentier, I'm going to ask to introduce ourselves, but I'll just say a word. Kelly is our newly appointed compact administrator, so she's been promoted. A little applause for Kelly.
Thank you.
Kelly is, I think, the longest standing member of the Office of Probation and Correctional Alternatives. She was at Probation and Correctional Alternatives when I got there, and she started as an intern when she was going to college, and really knows every facet of the information. But Kelly, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Bob. As Bob said, I began working at OPCA, well, DPCA at the time, when I was in college in 2001. So I have been in Interstate for a very long time, and it's a topic that's near and dear to my heart. So I'm very excited to be the Deputy Compact Administrator for Probation and to represent New York State in ICAO. So do you want our staff to?
Yeah, why don't you take this opportunity to introduce some of the staff with us. But before that, I want to say that a note on Kelly. She's been working double duty because she's still serving as the Deputy Compact Administrator for the Interstate Compact for Juveniles. Mm-hmm. That Compact Administrator is the Commissioner of OCFS. And of course, probation has a large part of that business. I would say 3/4 of the business on juveniles is probation. And so yesterday she attended, earlier in the week.
Yes, on Tuesday I attended the ICJ, which is the Interstate Compact for Juveniles, Rules Committee face-to-face meeting in Lexington, where we discussed rule proposals, amendments that are going to be presented at the annual business meeting for the commission to vote on, and will have the effect of federal law should they pass. So we, as a committee, met and discussed those rules and comments that were submitted by compact states. Recommended a few changes be made by the individuals who submitted the rule proposals, and we got a lot of work done. It was very productive.
So busy week so far, you know. Got in, she told me 6:30 on Monday. So Lexington on the plane all day long. Worked all day Tuesday. Breakfast in place, lunch at place. They went out to dinner, and then Wednesday morning back on the plane back to Albany. So very dedicated. We are moving. I know Dean DeFruscio and Commissioner Rosado are moving our candidate forward for the commissioner's consideration, OCFS, and then the governor's approval. So, we will not ask Kelly to do those two jobs at the same time for much longer because they're full-time jobs. But thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm really pleased, very pleased to have Lisa Good with us. And Lisa, I want to give you some time to introduce ourselves. So Lisa's going to serve as our new victim representative, and Lisa has been very, very involved in the Capital District community, and it's just such a pleasure to have you. Thank you.
Yeah. Great. Hi. I'm so glad to be here. It's a long process. No, but to thank Matt. I've never experienced anything like that in my life. We had lots of conversations. Did I cry on you? Probably. But I'm glad to be here. and certainly to represent victims' rights. It's just something I feel very passionately about. I began my work in the victims service field as a volunteer probably in like 96. And then I started a program called Urban Grief in 2001. And we were funded by OVS in 2019 under Trinity Alliance. And so that's allowed us to expand and increase our capacity to serve Black and Brown survivors who are disproportionately harmed by violence and victimization. And so I've learned a lot over the years, and I am also a survivor, so I bring that lens and perspective as well, and use my story nationally through Everytown, has an Everytown Survivor Fellow. And so I'm excited to be here and to learn and to lend my voice and to represent all victims well in this process and in this work. So I'm glad to be here.
And Lisa, I couldn't be more pleased that you chose to join us. It's wonderful. And, you know, reading your resume, I was so impressed. And so I know that we were persistent, but how blessed we are.
Yes, you were.
Yeah, but we were persistent, but how blessed we are to have you join us. So thank you.
No, thank you.
Yeah, and I do want to give credit to Matt Charton, who did a lot of work on that. Matt was the persistent one. He was definitely. So Matt, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure, and just thank you, Lisa, for your patience throughout that process, which is really a process that we may want to examine, because that's a tough process to go through for a volunteer position. But thank you for your patience, Lisa, and thank you for joining the council. As Bob said, we're so happy that you joined us. I'm Matt Charton. I am an assistant director here at the Office of Probation and Correctional Alternatives. Recently promoted to that position back in late October of 2022, and I'm serving that position now. Prior to that, I was the Deputy Compact Administrator and the manager of the Interstate unit. My roles and responsibilities as an assistant director still have a little bit of interstate oversight, as well as the alternatives to incarceration and the what they call the VARE unit, which is vocation, education, and reentry, with a really concentration on the on employment-focused programs for those in the community that may need that, as well as the reentry councils throughout New York State. Prior to coming to DCJS, I was a probation officer, senior probation officer at the Albany County Probation Department. Happy to be here, and really happy to have turned over the role of Deputy Compact Administrator to Kelly Palmentier, who I know will push the unit even further than it is now. Really left them in great hands. So thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Matt.
And thank you, everybody, for joining us. And I see that Assemblyman Weprin's not here. I do expect him to be here, though, Bob. I've had several conversations with David Sperry's Chief of Staff about being here.
Matt, I want to thank you for your work as Deputy Compact Administrator. Just excellent work in keeping New York State in compliance with the federal requirements. And Matt is really a national, well-respected nationally in the interstate business. And compact administrators, deputy compact administrators call Matt for advice on issues. He's been a primary, along with Kelly, in helping us craft new rules. New York State is a leader in rule change. I sit on the Rules Committee for the Interstate Compact, so a lot of great work there, Matt. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
And Allison Motter is our assistant taking notes today. And thank you, Allison. Allison's been filling in for Molly Brower, who's out for several weeks, but Allison's been doing great work. Thank you. So now, Kelly, I'm going to ask that you introduce our staff, some of the staff at the Interstate unit here with us today.
Yes, we're short 2 staff that are not in the office today. Tracy Frazier, who handles a section of the alphabet of probation cases. So she is responsible for processing those cases and any correspondence that we receive from other states or our local probation departments on the certain section of the alphabet, and she could not be with us today. And Raymond Tastian, who is the program aide who handles all of our ICJ juvenile transfer cases. So he's not with us today, but with us is Shayna Kern. Shayna, do you want to
Yes, I can
introduce
speak.
yourself? Yeah.
Yes. Hi, everybody. Nice to see everyone here and everyone on the line. I'm Shayna Kern. My path has been very similar to Kelly's. I joined the former DPCA in 2003 under Sarah Toller-Fassel, the late Sarah Toller-Fassel, who was amazing. And then Bob came in, also amazing in terms of replacing Sarah, right, Bob? And I was in Interstate at the time from 2003 to 2012. And then I joined our adult ops under Gary Goebel at the time and did Ignition Interlock. And then for almost 8 years, I did alternatives to incarceration work. And when Lisa talked about Trinity Alliance, my eyes lit up. One of their programs under Harris Oberlander and Andre Morris, their jail-based program was one of my assigned programs, so my heart is near and dear with Trinity Alliance. I really love them, and they're a great agency and the program in particular. So great to meet you, Lisa, and thank you. I'm back in Interstate now as at the end of March of this year, and I'm trying to assist Kelly by taking over that function in terms of the juvenile portion, so she can move on in her role and we can have, a fully staffed, hopefully. We're missing one program aide, but we can get back up to task. I love the juvenile work. Just as Kelly said, it's near and dear to my heart. I think it's very important work that we do, and I love who we work with, and the team is wonderful, and I thank you for having me here today.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Shayna. Lucky to have you, Shayna. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Yes.
Hello, my name is Penny Belcher. I am the adult unit supervisor at Interstate. Before I came here, I was working for OCFS as Braxton Family Court Liaison.
Well, that was pretty brief, Penny Belcher. And let me just say, and the reason that I want to call her on it is because Matt and I were out, and Gary and I were out in Oneida County several weeks ago. And the compact administrators, the designees, because we have a designee in each probation department, came up to me, Brenda, I think her name was, and said, my God, that Penny Belcher, she is incredible. And I hear that time and time again. I hear it about all the staff as well as Tyrone Cateau, who's going to introduce himself in a moment. But these folks have a presence throughout the entire state. And that's what keeps us in compliance with the federal regulations. They do great work. So, Penny, thank you. Mr. Cateau.
Hi, my name is Tyrone Cato. I'm a program aide in the compact unit. As Kelly mentioned, I'm just one of the program aides that handle incoming and outgoing transfer requests, case closures, request reporting instructions, progress reports. I just do all that I can to make sure that the entrance to someone finishing their probation, either in this state or any other state, that we lay the groundwork on what is expected and what is to be done, so that God forbid we come to some sort of a critical incident report. We've got a roadmap of where things started and how they ended up and how we can change that, how we can correct, we can learn from our mistakes from the critical incident report. So I do all that I can to try to prevent that from happening from the get-go, making sure that everything's in line with everything from the reporting instructions, making sure everything's in line with the progress reports, that we have all the information that we need. I could go on and on, but basically I'm just a program aide.
You're not, no, you're not just a program aide. Your role is very important in the unit. Without you, we wouldn't have the compliance percentages that we do or the safety, public safety piece. So it's very important, not
Indeed.
just.
Indeed. Thank you. So we're going to move on. I will say that Judge Robert Mandelbaum had to resign, step down, simply because he's got a very busy calendar. He is a hardworking judge with a trial calendar and just wasn't able to really get up here. And so we are going to work with the new chief judge. We have a new judge in New York State, John Wilson, and we're going to be working with the chief judge because he'll make an appointment and then it will be approved by the governor. So we'll move forward with that, and the next time we meet, we'll have a judicial representative as the law requires. We still have some appointments, Matt and Kelly. I think a Senate appointment, 2 Senate appointments are out, one Senate appointment. And the judiciary. So we're going to work on that. We want to bring the board up to full speed. You have before you the agenda. I'm not going to ask for a formal approval. I think there's very few of us here, but you'll see that what we're going to do is we're first going to approve the minutes. We're going to talk about the Probation Commission mission. We're going to review the data integrity audit, spend a little time on the data integrity audit. We're going to then skip down to the review of the probation and parole dashboards, compliance measures. That's a quick read because it's very visual. And then we'll end up with the one rule amendment that is proposed for the annual business meeting. And as compact administrator, Kelly and I, with the deputy compact administrators, Scott and I will be going out to, I think, Norfolk, Virginia in September and attending the annual business meeting where we'll vote. And if you've ever been, you've never been at that, but it's like a Congress. All the 50 states are there with voting machines at their desk, and it's very serious business. And so we'll have just one simple change. So we'll review that with you and then entertain any new business. Any questions so far? All right, so we'll get going. Why don't we take a moment, if you would, to review the minutes? And I know people being busy as they are, I'm just going to give you a few minutes and then ask for a motion to approve the minutes. So just take a moment if you want to look. The last meeting, as I recall, was October 25th, 2022. And while you're doing that, I do want to acknowledge that Tina Stanford has retired. Of course, we have Darrell Towns, the new chairperson. But I do want to comment that Tina was absolutely a wonderful person to work with, both at the Office of Victim Services and later at the parole board. The chairwoman did great work for New York State, and I was really pleased to see that she's going to enjoy the rest of her life now and open a new chapter. So
that doesn't need a second, but it gets one.
Yeah, no, that doesn't need a second.
Just to that point, probably should be noted that yesterday, Acting Commissioner Nucci sent out a letter announcing his retirement coming in August. So after 38 years of service, want to thank him for his service not only to DOCS, but all those DOCS affiliated functions that he's had. And another one who's put forth good service for the state of New York.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thank you for sharing that. I'm a big supporter of Anthony Nucci. I think he's a person with great integrity and has served New York State so well. So really pleased to hear that. So he'll move on and open a new chapter as well. He's
Absolutely.
worked very, very hard for New York State over the years in a very demanding position. So absolutely, thanks for sharing that. All right, I'm going to ask for a motion for approval of the minutes of the October 20, I'm asking for, an approval of the minutes of the October 25th meeting of the New York State Council Interstate Compact. Do I have a motion?
Yes, you do.
John Watson, second.
Yes.
Mark?
Sure. I don't know if can I second and vote on behalf of the senator if she's not here? Okay. So I second.
Second. Mark Mishler is second on behalf of the Senator, Julia Salazar. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, I think that motion passes. So we'll get into reading of the commission and mission. We do this each week, each month, or each time we meet for a clear understanding of what the mission is. Just let me say by background. So what is the compact? It goes all the way back to 1936. It passed the same year, actually 1934, with the Interstate Commerce Act. And you would say, so what was special about that time? The federal government was dealing with a lot of corruption, crime, prohibition during that period. And what you saw is a proliferation of federal legislation. And one was the Interstate Commission, passed in 34. It took 3 years to actually implement, so it was 1937. And what it is a compact of the states, 50 states and 3 federal territories, that allows for the orderly process and legal transfer of individuals. The intent is quite good. It's really to allow people to make a fresh new start. So a person from New York gets convicted, wants to move to Nevada because he's got a brother there in the construction business. He's willing to give him housing, support, and make a fresh new start as a career. That's the point of the compact. We're here to support people making changes in their lives and making fresh new starts. And that's what the compact's all about, but to do it in a lawful way. So just by way of background. So with that, Kelly, I'm going to ask that you read the mission statement to us.
Sure. The mission of the New York State Council for the Interstate Compact for Adult Offender Supervision is to serve as an advisory board to the State Compact Administrator and to make recommendations for the implementation of state policies and procedures that facilitate the effective tracking, supervision, and rehabilitation of individuals under community supervision, advance their orderly transfer across state lines, and promote public and victim safety.
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions, anyone? All right, so now Kelly's going to lead us in a walkthrough of the federal audit. There is a national data system. It's called the ICOTS, the Interstate Compact Offender Tracking System. I wish they changed the word with offender. I will tell you that when you look at documents from the Interstate Compact, they're using language that is quite dated. At the annual business meeting in New York City, I gave the keynote because I'm a compact in New York last year, and I actually suggested, and they have now begun a subcommittee to look at language. It should be the Interstate Compact for Adults in Supervision. We don't need the word offender. We need to get away from stigmatizing and negatively identifying individuals if we want to help them to change. So I say that because I don't want you to think that it goes unnoticed. And we now have a national work group that's going to examine language in all of the federal regulations and all the processes that we do. So that'll go forth. But you'll see the word offender, I'm kind of offended by it, frankly. And I didn't want you to think that it's something that we just take for granted. So the Interstate Compact for Offender Tracking is a national system. All of the data transfers, states enter into this. The benefit is that we get data on a daily basis. Kelly can run that data, and you'll see some of those reports in a moment, and the federal national office has access to it. From time to time, they do audits. Sometimes not as well informed, and you'll hear more about that as we go forward. By preface, I want to say that in response, well, I'm going to hold this actually in my response and ask Kelly to take us to a walk through the audit, and you'll see this document that says ICAOS 2023 Data Integrity Audit National Report. This is the national report, and there's one for New York State, which we got, but we gave you the national, and our results are included in the national report. And we'll just touch on we're not going to get in the weeds because we know data can be a little numbing. So we're going to take you through some of just the 4 or 5 indicators and what the findings were. So I'm going to turn it over to Kelly. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
Okay, so as Bob mentioned, this audit assessed the reliability and credibility of ICOTS data and was conducted with the intent to provide states with strategies and information for improvement on practice in their state. So this report summarizes the findings of all the compact member states together and was released to the Commission in February of 2023. The assessment focused on 5 separate areas. There's the demographic data and photos. There's what the national office refers to as junk records, which I will get into a little bit deeper in a moment. And duplicate profiles in ICOTS. Then there's the rejected case cleanup and individuals awaiting retaking maintenance. So those were the 5 different areas that the Commission or the National Office focused on during their assessment. So if you go to page 2, we will start by reviewing areas 1 and 2. They were those 2 sections were combined in their assessment, essentially. In area 1 is the demographic audit, and so that would be any profiles that were created by the sending state for an individual that they intended to submit a request for transfer to another state. So they create this profile for this person in the database. On November 16th, 2022, when this audit was conducted on New York State, we were responsible for 2,428 active profiles. In those profiles, they were reviewed for completeness, meaning that they were checked for dates of birth, social security number, FBI numbers, and to make sure that photos that were uploaded into those profiles met the photo standards that were issued by the national office. And New York State received a satisfactory rating in that area, and we were 99% compliant with the photos. So that's actually on page 2, but those two sections were combined in the rating. Are there any questions about that? I think that's important because ICOTS shares its data with other entities, and so they're pulling information from ICOTS, and so we need to make sure that the records that we are submitting in the system are credible and reliable. Okay, moving on to area 3, which is on page 4. This is the junk and duplicate profile cleanup. And junk profiles are records that were created with the anticipation of requesting an interstate transfer by one of the local probation departments in New York State, but that transfer request was never completed, or there was a duplicate profile created for an individual who already had a profile within the system. So the goal is to have one profile per individual, and that all interstate transfer related cases are located underneath that one profile. So states are responsible for ensuring that we don't have any junk profiles or profiles that don't have any activity in them or duplicate profiles. So in November, from November 16th of 2021 to November 16th of 2022, the year prior to the audit being conducted, New York State processed 1,541 new transfer of supervision cases. And during that time frame, we were responsible for the creation of 1 duplicate profile and 3 junk profiles. The national office provided us an unsatisfactory rating in that area, despite having only 4 cases total out of 1,500. And that was based on time frames that they existed only. Since then, the cases have been addressed, and the interstate offices have implemented a procedure and run the ICOTS dashboard reports, and we're doing that bi-weekly to identify and correct any errors to make sure that those profiles are cleaned up in a timely manner. Are there any questions about area 3?
Just let me jump in. So one, we brought to the attention of the national office and other states as well that they shouldn't be calling cases junk and duplicate files. We're talking about human beings here. These are duplicate case files, they're not junk. And secondly, I've spoken to them, and in the Eastern District states as well, as they need to really think about satisfactory and unsatisfactory. When you have 1,500 cases and you have 3 partially started cases that weren't closed, they're duplicates. Doesn't mean that somebody went unsupervised. It just meant that there's a half-started record out there. Give us the numbers. Say that 3 out of 1,600 cases, you had 3 duplicates. Better way of saying it than unsatisfactory. So they need to think about language, and you'll see more of that as we go through. So,
Was there any comparison to the other states that were unsatisfactory? Like, I mean, we were lumped in with a few dozen, and
yeah,
it appears that, you know, I mean, they could have 100. And
exactly. It's a great question. So wait until we see the dashboard, John, and you'll see how we compare. And by the way, we're probably the 3rd or 4th busiest state, as you might imagine, in the country, New York State. And you'll see how our performance compares with the nationals, to answer your question. Yeah. So we're going to show you the dashboards right after this.
We don't receive state-specific information for other states. We only receive New York's specific information, but this national report will show you that there were only 4 states in the whole commission that were considered satisfactory in that area.
But they don't let you know, like, how many cases put you into the unsatisfactory bucket? I mean,
One.
Yeah.
One is enough,
Right.
they said, so. And
so how do you need improvement then, I wonder? Well, but that one case, they looked at the time
The
frame
time
that
it
case
existed.
was left unaddressed.
Right.
And that's how they decided that we were unsatisfactory, based
Right.
on the length of that time, so.
Yeah, so
Yes.
one case will do it. Anyhow,
And just on that, John, to your point, I think we learned, we had to sit down with the national office and their staff to go over this because we were so, like everybody else here is like, wait a minute, what? And they said, there are plenty of states that have, written to us and tried, with the same concern about being unsatisfactory when they didn't have the numbers. So we don't know the number. We know that that concern was kind of across the board for those states. We were the only state that asked them for an actual sit down to say, wait a minute, we need to know what is going on here. You need to walk us through this. And and to their credit, which is really for those of you who are familiar with the commission, they took responsibility, which is really something for them to do. And they really acknowledge that they do need to change the way they go about, and I use quotes, auditing states, because sometimes it's not really an audit, it's more of an assessment, we think, so.
And based on suggestions that we provided during that meeting, the national office has actually changed the report, the dashboard that states have access to with regards to these 2 areas, and it really focuses more on the states that create the duplicate profiles, because New York was named in a couple different profiles where we were not the state that was responsible for creating that profile. We were the receiving jurisdiction. So that really responsibility should lie with the sending state. So they've updated the report to include the sending state's information on there, so it is specific to the state that created the profile.
yeah, I've said to them on occasion that when you send something that is basically an assessment and you're holding New York State responsible for what other states have control over, and you say it's an audit, this has serious consequences. We take audits very seriously in New York State. This is something that even the chamber would take a look at, the legislature might take a look at, it's a public document. And we want to be sure that it's accurate. So we challenge them, and you'll see in my letter, I'll mention it a little later, on these things. And to their credit, they responded that they were wrong. They're going to re-examine that language. Okay, so we'll move on to the 4th item.
Yes, so area 4 was with regards to rejected case cleanup, and that focused on the sending state's requirement to either resubmit a new, page 6 of your packet. That section focused on the sending state's requirement to either submit a new transfer request after the original request was rejected for supervision, or withdraw the case, whatever was happening with the individual, they would resubmit or withdraw as appropriate. And we are found to be satisfactory in this area with 0 rejected cases, being active for more than 60 days with no action. So we had no findings in that area. And then page 7 and 8 focus on individuals awaiting retaking. And I think that this section's a little misleading and tends to imply that these individuals were incarcerated here in New York State and were waiting for the sending state to come and pick them up. That is not the case. These are individuals who are under supervision in New York State. We've submitted a violation report requesting the sending state retake them, and they have not been retaking for a number of different reasons. Many have active warrants, and our probation departments are working to locate them, to serve the warrant and to hold them for retaking. And then there was, well, let me get into the assessment looked at the use of the violation report addendum to notify the sending state and update the sending state on the location and availability information for that individual. So from November 16th of 2021 and November 16th of 2022, New York State submitted approximately 240 violation reports to other states on individuals who had transferred their supervision to New York, and we were requesting that they be retaken to the sending state. And on November 16th, New York State had 11 individuals who were awaiting retaking by the sending state for longer than 60 days. 4 cases were being supervised by New York State Parole. 7 were being supervised by New York State Probation. So they could have been, all of those cases had reasons for why they were still pending. Again, probation departments were attempting to locate them, to take them into custody on the sending state's warrant, or for whatever reason, their request to be retaken had been withdrawn by New York State, and that just was not indicated. It was indicated in the tracking system, but not in the way the national office wanted it to be. So those have since been updated.
So I think 4 of those cases, Scott, were docs cases, but 3 of them you had resumed supervision.
Yes.
Probably after a hearing. And so, we notified, Scott notified them, and, in the future, we'll look at closely. We had 7 cases. Again, a number of those, we had 7 cases, we had resumed supervision, or Scott and I each had docs, and probation may have had a person who has committed a new crime, is being held in a local jail, not eligible for retaking. So there are reasons for not the retaking. And in some instances, those other states didn't come and take them, even though we had filed a notice. So that this is an indication. We always said to them, you really need to look at whose responsibility it is to retake. The sending state, you really ought to hold them accountable. So I think, is there anything else, Kelly, on that?
No, that is the totality of the report. But I think it's important to note that we did provide a copy of of Bob's letter to the executive director at the Interstate Commission for Adult Offender Supervision regarding our specific audit in New York State. And you can see that the letter addresses all of those issues that we brought up with regards to how the audit was conducted and the findings that were presented.
So, you can read that at your leisure. I won't go in now, but 2 things. One is I responded in writing to make these points to them. And secondly, we scheduled a meeting. And in fairness, their staff was receptive and saying, we were wrong. We need to rethink our language. And secondly, we need to rethink the areas that we're auditing and ensure that we're holding the right parties responsible. Can't hold the sending state responsible for the receiving state responsible for the sending state has authority over. So I think we influenced national policy there. And I'll say that we received a letter from the commission dated April 19th. That's in your file as well.
Right.
And what it indicates is that we will not be among those states being re-audited because we did very well in the audit. It was kind of odd when I read it because I said, uh-oh, here we go again. But then on the 4th paragraph down, it says, New York does not meet the criteria to be re-audited. So it's another way of saying that you did quite well the first time around and we don't need to come back. So we're among a handful of states that will not be re-audited because of the performance and what we do.
Great work.
So I want to, Kelly, why don't you take us through? I'm going to move to, we don't have too much more, and I know your time is important, but we want to show you the dashboards because this is truly a case where a picture is worth 1,000 words. And notably, you will see different titles on the top. You'll see a New York State document, a parole document, and a probation document for their various populations. Probation parole equal New York State combined. We will not go through the probation parole. We don't need to. You can look at that at your leisure unless you have any questions about it. But both probation and parole did remarkably well. And Scott, feel free to jump in on this conversation, but I'm going to let Kelly take you through the dashboards and what they look like. So these are what I call the speedometer dashboards, and we like to see green. Green is important. I think I'll leave it to Kelly.
Okay. So I'm looking at the New York State compliance summary from April 15th of 2022 to April 15th of 2023. The compliance percentage, anything over 80% compliant is, or anything over 80% is considered compliant. That would be the green portion. Anything under is non-compliant with the requirements of the ICAOS rules. So the case closure compliance for New York State, we are at 95.2%, and the national average is 95.89. So our requirement is to submit that case closure within 10 business days of the closure event, whatever that could be, the supervision end date, or other actions that happen in a case. But the case closure reply compliance. So New York State is the sending state in a case, and we receive a case closure request from another state. We have 10 business days to respond to that request. We are at 97.03%, and the nation is at 91.85. So we're well above the national office there. The request for progress report compliance, the receiving state is obligated to provide a progress report to the sending state within 30 calendar days of receiving a request from the sending state for a progress report. And we, as a state, are at 97.33%, and the nation is at 92.13%. On page 2, you'll see our compliance for reporting instructions, which are instructions that allow an individual to be present in the receiving state during the investigation of their transfer request. We have 2 business days as a receiving state to respond to all requests except for requests for individuals who meet the definition of a sex offender. Then we have 5 business days to respond. So this state is at 97.69% in that area, and the nation is at 97.46. The transfer reply compliance, we have 45 calendar days, or the receiving state has 45 calendar days to respond to a transfer request. We are currently at 91.52%, and the national average is 95.25. And then the violation response compliance. So when New York State is the sentencing state and has transferred an individual out of New York State, and that state requests a violation, we have 10 business days to provide a response to that violation. And the state is currently at 94.15%, and the national average is 87.74. So we did very well overall.
So 2 things. Go ahead.
Just two things on that. So one, just keeping in context when we compare it to the national average, we are the 8th, well, between the 7th and 8th, it changes, busiest compact statewide offices for nationally. On the probation end, we're the 4th busiest probation compact office nationally. And I think we've got one of the largest probation departments in the nation, in New York State Department of Probation. So those are things I always try to keep people aware of, and really remarkable about the work that Scott's office does and Kelly's unit does in continuing to keep ourselves compliant. But looking at that, you're like, okay, this is kind of dry. What do these things mean, like for a council, and how do I apply this to, public safety or putting individuals where they need to be successful? And I think they do. And I think, if you look at things like request for reporting instructions, what does that mean? That makes sure an individual gets to where they need to be in a 2-day time frame. A lot of people just trying to return home while the pendency of their transfer request gets investigated. So that's an important measure, that we're making sure that those people that need to be where they need to be successful we're making sure that they get to where they need to be with, on the day that they're sentenced to probation or on the day that they're released from incarceration. So that's an important one. Violations are important. When you look at, somebody who's absconded, we want to make sure that when a state informs New York State that that person has absconded, or that person is, technically non-compliant to the point where that state can no longer work with those people, that we are informing that state what we want in a reply to a violation. We're informing that state how we want them to proceed. What are we going to do as a state to address that non-compliance. So these are kind of, and they're just two examples, progress reports. I could go through the whole thing, but I just want to make sure that we put some context to these measures, that we understand that these do really relate to a lot of public safety issues, as well as making sure people are in the place where they're going to be most successful under supervision. So that's, those are just a comment I want to make, because this does kind of get dry. And even I, who's been through this for now 11 years, of eyes are getting heavy as we're going through these, but I want to make sure that the council understands that these are, measures that are really important to both people being successful and to continue to keep victim and public safety, issues in mind. So those are my two comments.
Thanks,
Thank
Matt, for contextualizing it. I think it's important. Any questions on anything you've heard so far? No, I want to say that when you think about public safety, when I got here 21 years ago, I guess, we revamped the Interstate unit, and one of the things we did was made a high priority domestic violence crimes, sex offender crimes, and violent felonies. So we do a super careful review of those cases. Why? Because when we see an application come to New York State for a transfer, the first question that Kelly and her team are looking at, Shen's team, they're looking at is, where's the victim? Where's the victim of this domestic violence? Is this individual trying to transfer to get that closer to the victim? So we're careful about that. When individuals, and I don't call them sex offenders, individuals convicted of sex crimes, again, stigmatizing, not good thing. Individuals convicted of sex crimes. But when they're trying to relocate, what's that residence look like? Is it across the street from a daycare center? Is it in proximity to a school? I want to be careful. So we're working with communities. And that's the second point I want to make, and that is, you look at big states, a lot of big states have a single probation department. We're a federated system. We have 57 county in the great city of New York probation departments, 2,500 officers, 75,000 individuals on supervision. It's a lot. And so consequently, the challenge to our staff is engaging those departments, because it's not just a single department where we can have a little bureau, like some states, we can process those really quickly, or a small state. In fact, our staff are sending daily reports to New York City primarily, because that's 40% of the business, saying, you've got this deadline coming up next Tuesday. Here's the 3 cases we need you to act on. And we have a great relationship with the New York City Department of Probation that we have forged over the years. So, in terms of control, we're a big state and it's a federated system. It's difficult, but still the staff, I think, do just an excellent job. And Matt, I can't say enough thank you for contextualizing the fact that we treat this business really seriously. In the course of the year, over 200,000 people transfer between states. This is a big business. At any given time, we have, just on, Scott, you probably know your numbers, but on the probation side, I think we have 5,500 individuals in different states across the country that we're monitoring. Others are supervising, but we're monitoring. Is there a violation going on there? Do we need to take a response? Because in interstate cases, jurisdiction is retained by the sending state. So we have to bring that individual back, right? To answer to the court, and Scott, I don't know how many cases you've got active in.
I'm not sure either, because I didn't come prepared with that number,
Yeah.
but they've been dropping pretty significantly
Yeah.
because of the lessons
But it
learned.
used to be 1,800, you're probably around 1,500, I think.
Outgoing,
Yeah,
they have about 1,000, I think.
yeah, outgoing. And incoming?
Incoming, I think they have about 700,
Yeah.
800 cases.
So that's 1,700 transactions, right? It's a lot of business. So it's a busy responsibility, and something, frankly, that most people, so technical wouldn't pop up as important, but it's important to public safety. Any questions about the audit or the letter? Again, I'm proud of the fact that, the team and how the two agencies work together. I can't say enough about Scott and Docs and the partnership we have with Docs and really delivering good service for New York State residents.
I just want to commend you on the way that you handled the approach with that audit, because I know firsthand that nothing that you or the wonderful staff that you do should ever be labeled unsatisfactory. So I'm happy that you address that issue with them in person and also in writing. So
Thank you. Really appreciate that. Appreciate that. One last item. I'm gonna ask Kelly to take it. There's one rule change from the Western region. We actually commented on it on the website because it's up for public comment. It's a simple change, but it's an important change and we supported it. Okay. Can you put this in context with this rule, Lynn?
Sure. So, so when an individual transfers their supervision to another state and they've violated their supervision and the receiving state submits a violation report to the sending state saying we're requesting retaking and revocation of supervision, the individual is subject, when they're subject to retaking that may result in revocation, shall be afforded an opportunity to have a probable cause hearing held. In that hearing, there are certain rules that pertain to that hearing and how that hearing must be conducted. This is the rule that speaks to that process. In section F, I won't go through the entire process of the hearing, but in section F, you will see that there is some language stricken. They're removing shall from the language and adding may. And what that will do is, if probable cause is found that they believed that this individual has committed the violations that have allegedly occurred, then the receiving state is obligated to take that person into custody and to hold them in custody until they're retaken by the sending state, or the sending state provides a response with how they're going to proceed with that person. At that point in time, there is generally no active warrant. And so there are states that do not have the authority to just take somebody into custody or make a warrantless arrest. So there were states that were automatically non-compliant with this rule because they didn't have the ability to just take somebody into custody based on the probable cause being found. So this language will allow those states that are able to make warrantless arrests and to just take somebody into custody to do so, but it also allows those states who do not have that authority to remain compliant with the ICAOS rules in that process.
So this rule it's on the public website for comment. We did comment because we support it. So it's visible to the other states, and it'll be entertained at the annual business meeting in Norfolk. We'll be voting on this. This is a very light agenda. Usually we have 5, 6, 8 rules. And the Rules Committee usually meets face-to-face, and they're grueling days, like Kelly just went through, but on the adult side, sometimes 2 and 3 days, locked in a room for 8 hours until you're going over these rules to make them work. The important thing is, so, what about these rules? And how do they really stand? These rules, and I keep saying it to the commission and my colleagues, they have the force and effect of federal law through the Supremacy Clause. It goes back to that 1934 federal legislation. This is congressional legislation. This is federal legislation. And so through the Supremacy Clause of the Constitution, the rules that we make actually supersede state law. And let me give you an example. One of the most difficult things that Matt and I've had to do, and one example is Albany County, but there are many, where a person has to be out 30 days because another state, Oklahoma, issues a warrant. They've been supervised here, but they have violated. And by the way, no one violates individuals lightly. This is only after they have failed many, many times, and they pose a public safety risk. So Oklahoma will say, we got your progress report. We have legal jurisdiction. You're just supervising. We have legal jurisdiction. We're going to bring this person back for violation. We're obligated to take that person into custody and hold them for 30 days. Now you can imagine, I used to be a deputy commissioner of correction department in Westchester, and we would never take a person without a neutral magistrate having reviewed that. I always used to say we all love our homes and we don't want to lose them in a civil lawsuit, right? For acting inappropriately. So the law is you're depriving a person of their liberty. And that's a big deal in this country, depriving a person. It's one of the constitutional guarantees. And so you have to be arraigned by a neutral magistrate in New York State, and that person has to determine that you're going to be detained. Not so with the compact. With the compact, states are obligated to honor those warrants from other states. So it's a call to Sheriff Apple. Sheriff, I know how you feel about this. You're reluctant because I was in your shoes. But the truth is, this is federal law. Let us send you the bench book and the federal law. Speaking to judges the same way. National warrants on misdemeanors. Judges would say, Bob, we don't issue national warrants on misdemeanors. We do it on felonies. We don't go out to another state and pick up the person on a misdemeanor. But according to the compact, you have to. That's the federal law. And when we show them the bench book, they say, oh my God, thank you for telling us we're going to be in violation of federal law. So, and the venue for violations is federal district court. That's where the national office takes you, imposes fines. Thank God we've never been in the federal district court. I don't want to be in the federal district court. And I certainly don't want the commissioner to know that we ever did anything that gets us in the federal district court. But we've been there. Matt and I have been at those meetings, at the annual business meetings where other states fined $50,000, $100,000 for not following these rules. So it is a serious area of business. Matt, any comment, Kelly?
No, just, asking a jail to take somebody in custody without a commitment order from a judge is a challenge. And getting a local town or village court to issue a full extradition warrant, and then asking a probation department to go to, asking Madison County Probation Department to have to go to California to bring this person back to New York State because it's federal law is a challenge. And, as I said, I'm glad those challenges are no longer mine and now Kelly's.
So those, and you have to know how to talk to sheriffs and district attorneys and judges in order to have them understand that it's the federal law. So anyhow, that concludes, I think, our business today. I don't think we have any news.
Just Assemblyman Weprin sends his apologies. He's got caught up in his final insurance committee agenda and the discretionary budgeting meetings. And he said he would try to make it over before the meeting closes. I got to make sure that I tell him that we're going to be concluding this meeting, so he's not coming over to it.
Yeah, and David makes every meeting.
He does.
He makes every meeting. He's really.
So he sends his apologies.
So that concludes the meeting. That's a part of the business of the Office of Probation and Correctional Alternatives. It's one of the 5 key responsibilities we have is the interstate transfer process. And I think as we go forward, we now have a great victims rep. Lisa, thank you again for joining. And we'll be bringing back, the next time we meet in the fall, we'll bring back the news from the annual business meeting. And Mr. Chairman, I look forward to addressing the parole board on how we can be helpful. DCGS funds 20 county reentry task forces throughout the state. And with the commissioner's leadership and the governor's commitment, we've increased funding to triple. So we're going to be able to really put more resources into those 20 county reentry task forces. But we want to work closely with docs. We do. Each county reentry task force has 2 co-chairs, one from the county and one from docs, a bureau chief or a reentry manager. So it's that marriage because localities are where services are provided, right? They may be returning from state incarceration, but the truth is the services are provided by counties. So it's the co-chairs that really lead each task force. And we want to spend some time with the parole board and have them understand the extent of the services that are provided. Those task forces serve anywhere between 2,500 and 3,000 individuals each year. So a lot of great work. We look forward to that. Any other comments? Yes, Lisa.
Questions. So just what you just explained, just in terms about the compliance and it being federal, If we weren't in compliance, where would that be reflected at on the dashboard?
So if we weren't, you would, one of those dashboards, I'll let Kelly answer that. Kelly, how would that show up?
We would be in the red section. Our little pointer would be in the red. It was, so anything less than 80% would
Okay.
be, and that whole section would be red.
Yeah.
So that would fall under transfer reply or?
Any one of them. would
Any
say.
one of
Any,
them.
yes,
Okay.
Yeah,
any
so
one of the
those are the 8
categories.
areas. Let me say what we do internally in our office is every other month we have what's called a report out session. All the managers bring their data, whether it's adult, juvenile, interstate, bereavement, all the alternatives. My saying is, in God we trust, everyone else bring your data. And one of the things we do is we look at our compliance on a monthly basis for this, because you've got to keep, on top of this, or else it can get out of control.
And the other question is on the violation response compliance. So Matt, when you were saying that if New York State is the sentencing state and you have to send someone back, or they're asking for someone to come back, and you said that you have to inform them on how you want that process to proceed. So is there a procedural guide for that, or is it based on a case-by-case basis?
It is outlined in rule. There is some discretion in certain instances depending on what the violation is being submitted on. So the process is outlined in rule, and I certainly will send you the rule book electronically. It's good reading. But in certain cases, a warrant must be issued, like if somebody absconds, a warrant must be issued. If it's a technical violation, somebody has violated the conditions of their supervision, say they haven't completed substance treatment, for instance, as a technical violation, and other technicals usually, the New York State would have the option to what's called order their return, where they are instructing that person that they have to return to New York State on their own in a certain time frame. And if they do not, then New York State must issue a warrant, but that's one of the options. There's a conviction for a new felony or violent crime. There, we have to issue a warrant, or if that person is sentenced to some time in that sending state or in that receiving state, the supervision state, the court can acknowledge the time that they've served in that supervision state as a disposition of the violation, either fully, accepting that term, or as a partial sentence to anything that they would face back here in New York State. So those are great questions, Lisa. I'm so happy to have you on this council.
I have one other question too. So you had mentioned, and just in terms of like the public safety with DV, sexual offender and violent offenders, and you were saying that you want to know where the victim is to see if the person who's transferring is trying to get closer. How do you know where the victim is? Like what is the source of that information?
I'm going to defer to the person who does it every day.
Yeah, so the sending state may provide that information. We often have the pre-sentence investigation report, or there will be a victim impact statement, something along those lines. We also run a criminal history check on those individuals. We check or do orders of protection. We check for orders of protection. We do DIR searches. And then
DIR, can you tell us what that is?
Domestic Incident Repository, is that the R. So we check all of those things on incoming cases to make sure there's nothing, that address isn't associated with anything. We have the details of the, can you sign our, I'm sorry. To make sure that, then if there's a victim's name, maybe there's an active order of protection. If that name is the same as, the victim information that we're receiving, then that would obviously be a flag for us. And we would reach out to the local probation department, say, hey, we've received this information. This looks like this is what's happening, and then have them check that out. So it depends on the type of case and, when there's somebody who is on supervision for a sex-related offense, We take some other steps. We check the registry. We send the case to the registry to make sure that they get registered. But as far as victims, we reach out to the local probation department. We provide them the address that they're requesting to go to, and they conduct a little mini investigation, go to the address, make sure it is compliant, not, if the victim's a minor, it's not near a school, it meets all of the residency restrictions.
Now, would there ever be a case where the victim would be notified that someone is trying to transfer into the state?
Well, that's a great
Yeah.
question, because we actually have a proposal that we're looking to fund for a victim notification system on interstate transfers for both probation and parole. But I think on parole, you have more control over your cases. But on the probation side, this would be what we're envisioning, and we have a proposal. We're considering it now, looking for funding. And what it would do, and is that if a person transfers, say a person, transfers back to Nebraska, they came to New York, what I say is 15 minutes, committed a crime, but a serious crime, when transferred back to Nebraska. In fact, we would do an automatic notification, and it would be, a victim would be able to anonymously, Lisa, sign into this victim notification system. They'd receive text on their phone, because that's what we do today. We communicate with phones. No longer even the email, but it could be an email or a text message. And we would probably hold it to 3 or 4 primary criteria. 1, the person failed to show. So he absconded from going back to Nebraska. He never showed up. Or 2, he absconded after being there. Or 3, he violated, and he was being violated. So there's 3 or 4 conditions where, when that occurs, our Caseload Explorer system, statewide throughout the state, would send a notification system to the victim. For those victims who elect, we're very careful about building a system that ensures that victims, 1, have anonymity because they need protection, and secondly, it would be voluntary, their choice to enlist, almost like a Vine system, but for community supervision. So, more on that to come. But I want to also invite you, Lisa, that if you wish, please feel free to make time to come over by the office. You can sit with Kelly and the staff and learn firsthand about some of the work we're doing to protect victims. Because I know that's where your heart is. You spend a great deal of your time in the community, and we'd love to have you as our guest, and where you could spend, perhaps a couple hours with staff just talking about the work we do and trying to protect victims. You're welcome to do that.
Because it's just as we're wrapping up, but just as something to consider. Like one of the things that I would like to see happen at the how we serve victims is that, like, so injured survivors of shootings often face very similar safety concerns, like DV victims, and the system is not calibrated for that at all. And so, similar safety concerns really kind of come up when we kind of relocate victims and their families, and and people are arrested, and all kinds of things happen, just all kinds of things happen. But I'm just curious, to see that as we look at, this particular system, how we can also make it applicable, to injured survivors and homicide survivors, because sometimes those families do require relocation. There are lots of safety issues as people, especially if there are arrests made and things start to move through the courts or whatever, there are safety issues. And the number one request we probably get is for relocation.
Yes.
But we also know people move around, so we can relocate someone here, or help them relocate, like to North Carolina or someplace else, or whatever the case may be. And, there's nothing to stop, people who are on supervision from moving to those places. Sometimes, it may be a violation, but if they have a particular goal or target in mind, you know, it could be all bets are off. So I just kind of, want to just, as we look at who victims are, for us to really expand our understanding of who needs protection and the benefit of this type of safety that a notification, could provide, so.
We are, it's a great point. We're searching for funding. I think it's $80,000 the last time we checked to implement this. And in fact, what I would work to do is not only make it for the interstate transfers, but everyone on community supervision with as a victim. So what it would look like is that when our probation department does a precedence investigation for the court, and they send out a request to the victim for a victim impact statement, in that letter, we would embody in that letter notification that a victim, in addition, can elect either to submit that impact statement or not, but apart from that, that they could join this notification system and be notified where a person is convicted or released from jail. This is the VINE, but, once they're supervised, so we could do, an expanded version of that.
Yeah, I think that would be, I think that would be good. I think I'm just curious to see how that would unfold, but I think it would be a helpful option, because therapeutically, on the therapeutic side of things or whatever, those are the kinds of things that people that they bring up, is they know so-and-so is out there, they know that they're getting out, and they know about the VINE system.
Yeah.
But for those other kinds of situations.
I read it in the case files. I read about 120 case files a year, and I read it that they're afraid to go into a certain neighborhood. They're afraid to be out. The parents are concerned. And what they do is they're requesting probation. Can we transfer this case? Can this individual go live with my aunt in Maryland? Yes. Probation will honor that. We'll do an interstate transfer to get that kid out of the neighborhood. So there are things that we can do. I also want to note that a lot of good work's done by the SNUG program. They have a social worker component, as you know. They have a hospital-based outreach. Damon Bacote, who oversees the SNUG program for the Office of Youth Justice, you probably know Damon, does a great job there. It's another funded program at DCGS. And this year with the GIVE funding, again, through the commissioner's leadership and the governor's support, the legislature's support, we're adding more money into the non-fatal shooting, because the non-fatal shooting, but for the grace of God, could have been a fatal shooting. So we're looking at those, investigating those more. So doing a lot in this area, but more needs to be done. So certainly I want to renew our offer to you. Please come, make an appointment, come in and spend some time with the staff and learn, what we're doing. And by the way, we're open. We can learn more.
Great.
We can learn more from the people who do the work in the community like yourself.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for the questions. Good questions. You can see we got the right victims rep on the board, right? So thank you. I won't keep you any longer. I appreciate you coming here today. If you haven't signed in, please sign in on the register. The meeting for the next meeting will be actually on the other side. It'll be November 14th. So if you want to mark your calendars on the other side of the agenda, it's the 14th. And enjoy your summers. All right. Thank you very much, Steve. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Give our best to son.
I will, of course.
Thank you.
Thank you. No, I'm all set. Thank you so much. Yeah. I know, yeah. Oh, yes, of course.
Thanks for coming. I know you're busy.
I need to.